Thank you. It's not supposed to be cryptic. It's really about how we can collaborate together towards better policy and practice. And at Flinders University, I think I work with some innovative colleagues, some inspiring students, and I want to make sure that we all are on the same page, that it's not a bubble, that it's actually a hub of connectivity where industry and students and researchers all come together to find better solutions for sustainable environments. So I was thinking about the breadth of that industry and academic cross-discipline connections and finding some answers on how we can work towards these environments. And I was reminded of this quote. So I suggest that this quote, eclectic, unprecedented environmental science, is an exciting and refreshing way to perhaps approach and address some dire challenges that we have in environmental management, and an extraordinary synthesis of transcending the disciplines in which we all sit in different sectors. And this is not new. People and planet, interdisciplinary sectors, have sat in the policy space for decades. Thus, we can conclude right at the start that NRM legislation in itself and NRM policy does transcend disciplines. But it's the intersecting of this knowledge, intersecting of these branches of knowledge, where we often find the best, most exciting and innovative solutions. So I want to propose 3 tenets in which we can find those intersections. And the first is building academic and NRM industry relations to transcend those disciplines. And I provide these 3 tenets in a way in which I invite you to engage further with academia of the 3 major universities in South Australia, but beyond that, to create some solutions. And traditionally we've sort of seen this nexus between students learning from academics, going on to become practitioners, perhaps practitioners engaging with academics in research or using the science from academia. But I want to turn that one on its head a little bit and say that those arrows go in both directions in every instance. Traditionally, we've seen apprentices, if you like, who are the students, on work placements with the jacks of all trades, with the practitioners, learning directly from them in a fairly structured way. We've seen the Masters of One, the academics, sit perhaps in ivory towers, doing perhaps fieldwork and learning activities with the apprentices, but having little interaction with the jacks of all trades. And again, I propose that those jacks of all trades and the Masters of Ones can swap hats at many times, and that academia learns very much from practice and vice versa. The second tenet, that we can bring to industry practitioners better together with community members to further transcend disciplines, and that students in this setting, and I work predominantly with final year students and postgrad students, have a big role to play in this. And I just want to use a common example, a management cycle. And that we can bring community in at every stage of that management cycle to plan, to undertake, to check and monitor and act and evaluate on perhaps a restoration activity. And that at every stage, our students, our upcoming, keen, excited, and often innovative thinkers who are the next practitioners have a big role to play alongside you, not as apprentices. And the third tenet, that to transcend disciplines truly, that we have to connect both global and local communities, that our legislation, our policy and practices can't sit in a bubble that is South Australia or that is Adelaide. So for example, our Paris Accord might come down to a regional level where we have action for climate change mitigation. That goes further down to the patch level where schools and communities are doing their bit to enact climate change mitigation. Or when geographers worked with emergency service practitioners and ecologists to better understand how that global and local interaction happens. So if legislation transcends disciplines, then practice also transcends disciplines. And in the last 40 years, we haven't created all the solutions and come down the pathway that we had hoped to. So if we work in this interdisciplinary space, we're much more likely to create solutions. And I want to invite you now into my classroom and some projects that allow that interdisciplinary interaction. This is a concept project. It sits somewhere between Instagram and Strava. We all know that we have a lot of restoration issues in parks where humans move through the landscape, on roads, on trails, on walking tracks. People love taking photos of their travels and their trails, and they are often the first observers of change in those landscapes. So the concept is a citizen science one in which we create an app with the students' support alongside park managers in the landscape to actually monitor those changes. Erosion, dry conditions, broken signage even, and weed incursion into the landscape. And the vast array of tracks, of course, don't allow our park managers to do that. So with both students and citizen scientists, we could collect that data really easily, allow the park managers to use it for daily management practices, but the students to analyse longer term trends that are happening in this space. An activity that we've been doing for more than 10 years, which is really exciting, and I hope it continues, is with natural resources in South East, where expert environmental educators have been working alongside natural resource practitioners to engage much better with community, to give the messages that community needs in a way that they need them. And Coastal Connections has been running for 10 years. We've had very secure funding. It may not happen in the future, but what we've done is we've used students and used it as a teaching space for students in environmental interpretation. Firstly at Deakin University out of Warrnambool, and now at Flinders University here in Adelaide. We would love to spread that up the coast and talk to people who are working in that coastal management space. And the third activity or project is something that I'm doing in my classrooms all the time, is teaching the students how to better interpret the landscape in the hope that we will connect with community and encourage them to understand the changes that we see and the assets in their local patch. But igniting interpretation is an NRM education collaboration where parks, different patch managers submit a proposal for interpretive signage, a website, a flyer, a video to my class, and that the students actually create a draft for the practitioners, knowing that resources are really tight in some of these spaces, and both time and money to create interpretation can sometimes be challenging. So what we offer here is this nexus of suite of solutions where we can work together. So let us transcend these disciplines, let us connect intellectually and practically. Let us observe both place and planet, and let us interpret and build a coherent, livable world to take away a positive message that we are the change and that we can make these changes both in the short and longer term. And just like you, I'm a bee in a much bigger hive, and I encourage you to buzz along with me to find the best flower that suits our local environment, our students, and our natural resource management areas. Thank you.